please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, it's a fag end of earnings season, but a couple of stocks will be in focus today. BPCL, that's one stock that we'll be looking out for. It comes out with a set of numbers. Sonal's with us to run us through all those details. Hey Sonal, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. And you know, BPCL is a very strong set of numbers. It's a beat on all the parameters if we talk about it. And it was driven by both the marketing and the refining segment. And the EBITDA margins, they came in higher by 50 basis points versus our expectation of an expansion of 20 basis points. So if I run you through the numbers, the reported GRMs, they came in at $6.5 per barrel versus our poll of $5.8 per barrel. Even the core GRMs, they came in at $5.57 per barrel. In terms of marketing margins, they came in at 4.6 rupees per litre versus an expectation of 4.1 rupees per litre. Inventory gains were on the higher side. For the marketing segment, it was at 350 crores, and for the refining segment it was at around 100 crores. So the revenue that came up higher by around 8% at 65,240 crores, higher than what we were expecting. EBITDA came in higher by 17%. Margins, they came in at 5.7% versus our poll of 5.4%. Profits also came in higher by 25%. We were expecting profits of around 2,100 crores and they came in at around 2,600 crores. So I think the street would like it. The profits, however, came higher due to a component of higher other income, and also because of lower tax rates that came in at 25% versus 33% last quarter. But overall, a good set of numbers, and I expect the stock to be in green today.
Okay, Sonal, so expect the stock to stay in green, and that was for BPCL. Is that the case we're expecting from ONGC as well? Is that expected to deliver a good quarter as well, Sonal?
Yes, Anisha, we are expecting a good quarter from ONGC, majorly led by the higher crude realizations because the oil prices have been going up. However, on the side of gas realizations, we are expecting a flat quarter sequentially. In terms of revenue, a growth of 5% is expected at 24,000 crore rupees. EBITDA is expected to go up by 5%, and operating profit margins, they are expected to expand by just 10 basis points, and profits, they are expected to show some strength and are expected to grow by around 29%. But the main number remains the crude realizations that we are expecting to come at a quarter high, multi-quarter high, expected at $67 per barrel, and has been highest in the last, I guess, 10 quarters. Gas price realizations, however, are expected to remain flat sequentially, but increase on a 15% rate on a YOY basis. Operational sales volumes, however, are expected to decline on a sequential basis. Crude sales are expected to decline by 3% sequentially, and gas sales, they are expected to decline by around 4% sequentially. Profits, however, are expected to be higher because of the dividends that the company will receive from its subsidiary. Let's see how the stock reacts before the numbers come out.
Okay, thank you, Sonal, for bringing us those expectations as far as the review for BPCL. But moving on, Nigel, SEAL will be in focus today. That one reports its Q4 numbers today. What are you expecting?
Splendid numbers. The numbers will be superb. It's Q4 numbers. We're already 2 months into Q1, but the numbers will be brilliant. You know, that's a given. We know what's happened with other metal companies as well. They've given good numbers, and sometimes there is some profit booking that's come about on those stocks as well. But let's talk about the numbers. Top line, more than a 30% growth. Operating profit, yes, they'll deliver an operating profit that compares with the loss. And this time around, the poll, you know, it threw up a lot of numbers, but in fact, the number that we are working with is around 400 crores approximately, a big deviation in terms of what net profit a lot of these brokerages are coming up with. In Q3, remember, they reported a net profit after nearly around 11 quarters of losses. So these numbers should be good. What drives the top line? Steel prices as well as volumes. In terms of volumes, we're working with a sales volumes number of around 3.95 million tons approximately. And EBITDA, it's going to be positive in comparison to an EBITDA loss. Why is that? One is that, in fact, you know, the mix is going to be good. That's they used to sell nearly around 25% of their total sales mix was semis, that is not finished steel. Now that number has come down to roughly around 15% approximately. So lower amount of semi sales, that's what's going to help them. Better realizations is going to help them. And SAIL has a good amount of their sales mix that is towards longs. And remember, in the last quarter, long prices had gone to the roof. So that's going to be very good for them. You just watch out for the gratuity costs. That could be a one-off hit of nearly around 500 crores approximately, you know, maybe 500 to around 1,000 crores approximately. So you just watch out for the employee cost out there. Debt, that's the biggest problem for SAIL. They have close to around 40,000 crores. But if we're done with all that capex, then in fact we should see debt reduction from year on. Finance cost as well has spiked up for the last couple of years. Keep an eye out on that. The numbers will be good. Let's see whether or not it's a sell or news kind of story.
Okay, let's see whether the trend of sell-on news continues for the metal stocks or not.
Quick check on the Asian markets. Remember when we started off the show, the Nikkei was down nearly around 1.5%. The Kospi as well was down nearly around 1.5%. Global cues were not very positive to kickstart trade. And in fact, all those markets still holding with those deep cuts. We have the Shanghai market as well as the Hang Seng. Both of them sitting with cuts of around 1% to around 1.5%. But let's come back home then. And let's talk about earnings reactions. From the pharma space, Glenmark reported quite a subdued set of numbers. Ekta is with us to run us through all those details. Hey Ekta, morning.
Hi, morning Nigel. Well, it turned out to actually be quite a subdued quarter for Glenmark, and it was expected that it is going to be subdued on account of the pricing pressure in the US plus the India business. So that's exactly what played out. The revenue was down around 7.2% year on year. The margins came in at around 14% versus 18% year on year, and the profit declined 17%. Now, the reason for that was because India was up only 5.5%, plus they had US which declined 31% on a year-on-year basis. There was a base impact due to Zetia generic, which is basically a cholesterol drug that they had launched with exclusivity. But separately, there was also pricing pressure which impacted the company. However, there were other geographies such as Europe which did well, so that was up around 38%. The company has had an inspection at its Pithampur facility. They have issued this in the press release, and they've received 5 observations for that, plus the Monroe facility, which received around 2 observations from the US FDA. So those would be 2 factors which the stock would incorporate into today's reaction. And separately, in terms of their new drugs under development, they have filed a new drug application for a nasal spray in the US, plus a phase 2B study for a derma molecule, GBR 830, is expected to begin in Q1 of FY19. So while that is positive, I think the stock is going to primarily react to numbers today.
Okay, Ekta, thank you so much for that. Staying with pharma space, Fortis has reopened bidding process and will also be reporting Q4 earnings today. What are the expectations from that one?
Oh, well, the drama doesn't really end with Fortis. Yes, Fortis reopened the bidding process. This was announced just towards the fag end of yesterday's closing session. The bidders are going to submit a fresh proposal by 31st of May, 5 p.m. The June 1st, the board will shortlist bidders, and then the shortlisted bidders will be given 10 days for financial legal due diligence. The binding bids are expected to have a minimum investment of 1,500 crores, funding for RHT, exit to the private equity investors in SRL. The binding bid should be then submitted by 14th of June, post all of the due diligence. Remember that Fortis Q4 numbers are today as well, so the street is going to be watching out for anything with regards to the audit report after Deloitte did not sort of sign off properly on the numbers last quarter. And also with regards to any sort of disclosure when it comes to, say, the Luthra report, which was expected by the end of May. And we would also be watching out for the operational performance, considering the kind of the kind of news that Fortis has been suffering from, whether there's any sort of direct impact on the business as well.
Absolutely, Ekta. Thanks so much for joining in and running us through those details. Well, finally, we'll slip into a short break. You come back, it's expiry week. We'll tell you all the cues coming in from the derivatives market. Stay with us.
Well, as Italy's political turmoil rattles global stock markets, the head of the country's central bank, Ignazio Visco, warned that policies embraced by populist parties risk Italy losing the irreplaceable asset of trust. Listen in.
There are no shortcuts to reducing Italy's debts. The financial crisis that would follow would lead to this country taking many steps backwards. It would mark the name of Italy detrimentally in the world. We are not constrained by the European rules, but by economic logic.
El Erin believes that the downturn in global markets over concerns about economic fallout from Italy's power struggle highlights the mistaken assumption that the world was in a phase of synchronized growth. He believes Italy's president's blocking the nomination of a Eurosceptic finance minister is a big miscalculation. Let's hear him out.
Moving on, then Coal India recovered 3% from lows after reporting Q4 earnings yesterday. Nigel, what are the brokerages saying?
Well, you know, Anisha, once the numbers came out, everyone was confused. There was a big other expenditure, there was a big employee cost, and in fact, there was lower stripping ratio. Now, brokerages, they have come up with the impact. Remember, yesterday, intraday, there was a bit of a recovery, telling you that there were a lot of one-offs, and the street was willing to give Coal India a chance. Now, Macquarie, they reiterate their outperform rating. They upgrade their EPS estimates by nearly around 10%. The target price comes in at around 335 rupees. They say that, in fact, the reason for the upgrade is the strong earnings. They're saying that, in fact, the risk reward at around 6% dividend yield as well is fairly attractive. But they're also cautioning us that they're nearly around 10 to around 12% above consensus EPS. Jefferies, they maintain a buy with a target price of around 350 rupees. They're saying that, in fact, the Q4 numbers, they're clearly a beat, better than expected. Both the FSA realizations, the e-auction realizations, both of them surprised positively. And they further add that the price revision, that's what's going to help them with some cost rationalization. And at around 6 times EV upon EBITDA, they believe it's not very, very expensive, and it's in fact attractive. Morgan Stanley says the key positive was the better than expected realizations. They, though, have their underweight rating with a target price of around 245 rupees. And finally, Nomura, they have a neutral rating, target price of around 332 rupees. They say that, in fact, it's an earnings beat. The FSA realization bodes well with regard to its outlook. Keep an eye out on this stock. Remember, they have an analyst meet in Mumbai this time for the first time ever. So let's wait for the commentary coming in from the management.
Okay, Nigel, thank you so much for that. We were talking about the Italian turmoil, and it seems like it has had impact as well as on the other asset classes as well. Manisha Gupta joins us now to tell us what was the impact of the Italian turmoil on the other asset classes. Manisha, over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that. Italy has had its impact, and mostly on the currencies and the gold prices. Remember, with increasing percentage of possibility of a default coming in from there, you have seen Safe Haven Bank come in. So it's not just the US dollar or the Swiss franc which have gained. You have seen that strength come back in gold as well. Gold actually seems to be taking strength from the fact that while the US dollar has been increasing, you have seen the other currencies decline, and the other currencies are, hedging their risks in case of gold. So gold in that sense seems to be standing tall as of now. Of course, Italy hasn't had too much of an impact on the crude oil prices, which is tackling with its own fundamentals here. We have seen a 5th straight day of decline coming for the prices. Yesterday, you saw the U.S. crude oil prices decline by 3%. While there is an expectation that the OPEC and the allies will wind down the deal in some sense, the 1.8 million barrels per day of a cut that they have been managing since January 2017, they will perhaps increase some supplies from there. But the markets also do anticipate that the OPEC will limit adding much supplies, because we already have seen the crude oil prices come off by $5 from the kind of highs that we have seen, and they would want to more or less maintain these current prices. So at max, it perhaps is going to be 500,000 barrels of an increase that they might put. Having said that, it is only going to be about 22nd June, that meeting in Vienna, that we will have some clarity on what OPEC really tends to do.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for that, Manisha. Well, getting back to stock-specific action then, June 4th is the target action date for Biocon Mylan's application for biosimilar pegfilgrastim. Now, the US FDA will give their view on Biocon Mylan's application for the biosimilar on that particular day. Ekta is with us to run us through what we should be watching. Ekta.
Hi, thanks, Nigel. Well, like you mentioned, it is going to be an important day for Biocon on June 4th. That's exactly when the US FDA is going to give their decision with regards to the biosimilar application for pegfilgrastim. Now, just to put it into perspective, pegfilgrastim is basically used in terms of cancer and chemotherapy to basically increase the white cell production in a person, especially in people who are going through chemotherapy. And the generic name for this particular drug is pegfilgrastim. The branded name is Neulasta. Now, remember that this particular application was already reviewed by the US FDA in October of 2017, and they had received some amount of queries from the US FDA. Biocon and Mylan had responded to those queries successfully in October of 2017. So now June 4th is basically when the US FDA is going to give their decision on it. Now, interestingly, there will be a couple of scenarios which can play out. The first scenario on June 4th is that the US FDA comes back gives an approval to this particular biosimilar application for pegfilgrastim. So that means that the company can launch in the US on a particular date. Scenario 2 is that the US FDA, like in October 2017, comes back with more queries with regards to this particular biosimilar. And the third scenario is that they could probably await a resolution on the observations which were issued to the Bangalore facility. Now remember that there was a pre-approval inspection which took place by the US FDA in April of 2018 for pegfilgrastim. They had issued 7 observations to the facility, and according to analysts, it was largely procedural in nature. Now, separately, besides this, there is another risk that Biocon is facing with regards to this. There is a litigation which is going on with regards to 2 process patents. Now, in case this litigation is not solved in time, then there could be a launch at risk as well. But overall, what kind of opportunity does pegfilgrastim propose? It would be the first biosimilar, Biocon Mylan would be the first entrant for pegfilgrastim if things go as planned, and they could make around $60 to $70 million annualized in 1 year from this particular biosimilar. Separately, it would be the second biosimilar that Biocon has received approval for from the US in case things go as planned for this particular one.
Okay, Ekta, thank you so much for bringing us all those details on Biocon. But moving on then, and let's go across to Mangalam. He's standing by to tell us what the cues look like in the F&O space this morning. Mangalam, good morning.
Good morning, Anisha. So yesterday, remember, the Nifty fell about 55 points. There was weakness across the globe as well. But what really stood out was that as the Nifty fell, the rollovers ahead of expiry, they picked up. So rollovers just a day before yesterday, as we got into trade yesterday, was 17%, which was lower than the average. They moved all the way up to 30%. That gives one the sense that maybe it was the long rollovers that took place, primarily because the Nifty May futures discount widened. What exactly is a long rollover? You sell in this month and you buy the next month. So if you're selling in this month, the discount, perhaps there is a case for that widening. At lower levels, the cost to long rollovers were less. So that is something we'll keep an eye out on. As far as yesterday's down move is concerned, that has got some protection back into the system. The FI has bought 1,200 crores in index options, and out there, nearly 10,300 long puts were added, 5,100 short puts were covered, and the calls that were written at 10,700 and 10,650, the premiums indicate that yes, the 20-day moving average could be a hurdle at least till this expiry. As we broke below the 20-day moving average, failed to sustain above it, the 10,700 put writers, they too ran for cover. Close to around 6 lakh shares were shed out there. A couple of stocks which left the F&O ban, we have GN Irrigation and Reliance Communications. Just Dial has been alternating between entering and exiting. Today, it enters the F&O ban.
All right, Mangalam, thanks so much for that. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up on Power Breakfast. You stay with us. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.